Hello everyone and welcome to TV Talks, the show where I take a look at both the good and the bad of what television has to offer. And now today, we're talking about the myth, the legend, fighting Foodons. I've been making fun of this show since the 4Kids Fox Box Marathon has started. Even in the very first few minutes of my very first video in this marathon, I've been slamming that show. And now, it's time to talk about it. Well, I don't have any visceral hatred towards it. It's just kind of fun to make fun of. But I'm getting way ahead of myself. So, what's it about? It's Yu-Gi-Oh! But with food. I'm not kidding. It's about this kid named Chase who lives in this chef world thing, I guess, where you make food, then you put these Yu-Gi-Oh! Card-looking things, which are called meal tickets, onto the food, and then, if you've prepared it right, it transforms into a monster called a Foodon. Creative name. I mean, wow, it must have taken you ages to think of taking the word food and adding on to it. Wow. Stellar. But, yeah, and then basically you get the monsters and you have them fight each other for reasons. Yeah, and that's basically it. I mean, there is a plot where Chase has to get all of his Foodons and his friends and stuff to help him fight against the evil King Gorge and his evil army known as the Gluttons, but it's still kind of shallow. But what's the history of this show? Well, in Japan, there was a manga called, well, what else? Fighting Foodons. Because this was in the middle of the Pokemon boom, and stuff like Yu-Gi-Oh! And Digimon was also catching on. So this guy who wrote it said, hey, you know what? These shows are really popular, time to make my own, and look at these two most popular, Pokemon and Yu-Gi-Oh! What if I combined them together? And Fighting Foodons came out. And it immediately got mixed reception and very minimal publicity. But, you know, rule of anime, if a manga is decently popular in some way, it becomes an anime. Not knocking that, I mean, that is kind of cool, but because it also gives some lesser known stuff the chance to shine, but this wasn't really catching the world by storm. I mean, it had some fans, but just nothing compared to some of the other Pokemon knockoffs that were coming out. But it still happened. And then 4Kids took a look at it and said, you know, we're just starting to branch out into this business. Let's take a hold of this one and see what we can do. I mean, we've got Pokemon, we've got Yu-Gi-Oh! Maybe we can make this one catch fire in the States as well. I mean, who knows, right? Well, I'll tell you who knew. The general public. Because this was one of the 5 shows that was in Foxbox's original lineup. That being Kirby Right Back At Ya, Stargate Infinity, Ultraman Tiga, Ultimate Muscle, and this. And coming right out of the gate, this was the least anticipated show in the lineup. Starting right from the press release when they decided to make the American name of this show Food Feud, which does not sound like a show name but more of an episode name. People started getting turned off by it, and then when they heard the premise, they were also turned off by it. That and other things like Stargate Infinity and Kirby Right Back At Ya with recognizable names being a lot more eye-catching. But some people decided to reserve judgment, and then the trailer came out, and the name Fighting Foodons was back, but it didn't show any of the actual show, just the theme song, which I'll talk about the theme song in just a few minutes, but trust me, I will. And that certainly turned people off more. So just the more people saw of it, no matter how much it was promoted, and it was promoted pretty darn well, because remember, they wanted all these shows to be really big hits, so they promoted them all. And it worked for 4 out of the 5, because this one, upon the original launch, which Foxbox's original launch was extremely successful, having a lot of viewers, this one was not only the worst reviewed, but the least viewed. As Roger Myers Jr. from The Simpsons would say, "What happened? Did lightning hit the Telecaster?" And if by lightning you meant Fighting Foodons, then yes, good sir, absolutely. Because people weren't really on fire for the Foodons. Whether it was the promotion, the premise, the name, or what have you, a lot of people just didn't watch it. And even the reviews it got were not very good. It was just as unpopular here as it was in Japan, but is it really that bad? Well, not atrocious, but it isn't really good. For one, the characters are extremely weak. The only reason I remember Chase's name is because it was all over the promotional materials and all the commercials. Because, I've been watching some of these commercials and interstitials, and they just so happen to come with Fighting Foodons commercials. And that's the only reason I know his name, because I've seen it so much in the commercials. I couldn't tell you any of the other names of the actual human characters. And all the villains are just kind of unintimidating and weird. The characters are just kind of the stereotypical archetypes. I mean, there's the coming-of-age hero, there's the annoying sister, there's the mentor guy, there's the big bad villain and his henchmen. That's pretty much as deep as they get. How about the Foodons? Well, they're okay. The main one, Fried Ricer, is definitely trying to be the show's Pikachu, but he's not even close to the coolest one. There are a few cool ones here and there, but they all just kind of look like rejected Pokemon OCs from the early 2000s. I mean, some of them talk. Okay. Some of them can do more moves and stuff. Okay. That's pretty much it. Other than that, they're all just Yu-Gi-Oh monsters or Pokemon or anything like that. There's nothing really, aside from the fact that they used to be food, and most of them have a slight resemblance to food. Nothing else makes them stand out. Nothing else makes it unique. Okay, I take it back. There is one that is actually really unique, and I actually really like this one, and it always actually genuinely makes me laugh whenever it happens, albeit not very much. When you prepare one incorrectly, no matter what it is, it always turns into the Foodon known as burnt meatballs. It's basically the Fighting Foodon's equivalent to Magikarp. And while being funny, it's nothing amazing. I mean, it's not going to make the show. Just a few bouncing blobs with eyes aren't going to change much. The combat is also really shallow. I mean, it's kind of been there, done that. Pokemon was more extreme. Even from the little bit I've seen of Yu-Gi-Oh, that seems more extreme. This just seems really tame, which you might think is a 4Kids edit, but actually no. 4Kids didn't really edit it a lot. Very few, if any, changes. Again, this is when they actually really cared about their shows and actually wanted to see them prosper. Therefore, there were few to no edits, albeit this show was very short-lived, but even still. So yeah, the designs aren't very interesting, the combat isn't interesting. Please tell me at least the stories are interesting. I know you're saying while you're screaming at your computer and then also rolling around on the ground in some sort of fetal position, but no, suspiciously traumatized viewer, this is not the case. The stories are extremely weak. It's basically just, I have a Foodon, you have a Foodon, let's fight. Or, ooh, the gluttons are coming, ooh, let's fight them, ooh, they're evil. And I basically just explained all the development of the entire story. It pretty much stays exactly at that. It's just good guy, bad guy, food monsters, battle, 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 day is saved. I mean, for kids it's harmless, but that doesn't mean it's a good show. Just because something is harmless and ineffective doesn't make it good. In fact, this one is actually pretty darn bad, probably the worst in the original lineup. Because it doesn't have that thing that makes it special. It doesn't have that one little flair. I mean, yeah, the monsters are food. So what? It's just a generic kind of monster collecting anime. That's basically it in both the English and Japanese. That's why I'm not comparing the two, is because they're pretty much the same. In both versions, and maybe even the manga, I don't know, I haven't read it, it's just really shallow and just kind of generic, been there, done that. Nothing's really special. But there is one thing that stands out about the English version. The theme song. You know, the one that they played in the trailer, and that's basically all you got to see up until the show actually premiered to dismal ratings? So, what they did was they put some choir and someone singing the solo parts to classical music. That's all they did. They didn't do really anything except they composed some classical music and then just sung lyrics over it with Fighting Foodons theme, and the lyrics are really hokey at that. Now, I know you're confused because I taught you guys that Foxbox had the best theme songs out of all the 4Kids lineup. Like, that's when they actually made good theme songs, right? It's true. But they kind of dropped the ball on this one. I mean, you can't be perfect 100% of the time, and this is most certainly the case here. Albeit it is a guilty pleasure, but still, again, that doesn't mean it's good. It's sung well, and the music sounds good, but again, it's classical music. But I have a theory as to why they did it like this. This was kind of a fad at the time, albeit the fad was slowly dying, but still. Things like Pirate Island, The Wacky World of Tex-Avery, and even some songs from Animaniacs were all classical/public domain music. But the difference is that the lyrics were fun, and the characters were having fun, and the actors were having fun, and it was sung well. It's sung well. It doesn't really have the others. I mean, I can't say for the choir, but the guy who's singing it sounds kind of like, yeah, I'm getting paid for this. It just kind of gives off that vibe. I mean, like I said, it's sung well, but it kind of shows you what's going on in the show. You've seen it before/heard it before, and the quality is nothing amazing, although it has one or two slightly amusing things in it. It's not gonna go above being just kind of lame and cringy. Because yeah, the dialogue and the writing are pretty lame and cringy. Because, they're taking something so seriously, not only with such a bad premise, but such a been there, done that premise. So, and also the character development being just so weak. It all leads to one huge cringe fest. So, do I blame 4Kids for picking this up even though they knew it was going to be a failure? Well, kind of. I mean, it most certainly wasn't popular in Japan, so they could have looked over there and just saw that as a warning. But the thing is, the show wasn't over by the time they picked it up. It was about halfway through development. So, yeah, they had no way to foresee it. And sometimes the anime becomes more popular than the manga and vice versa, so you never know. But here, the writing was on the wall. It was just as unpopular as it was in Japan, and it only lasted one season. And yes, they did the old 4Kids thing that they used to do with promoting failing shows. Trying to give it a chime in the spotlight, but that proved to be futile because it didn't really work. The ratings were still really, really low. The only episode that really did well was the series finale, only because it was the most heavily marketed out of all the episodes, and it advertised series finale, which when you do that, even for a bad show, it usually brings in some decent numbers. But even if that all of a sudden just started becoming their huge show, it couldn't have lasted much longer because it was still bombing in Japan, which means that production would have had to stop entirely. So it was just kind of an exercise in futility either way. Unless this somehow got over to Japan, all this marketing stuff they did, and it made it popular, then it could have carried on, but fan interest just wasn't there. This was Pokemon territory, and even to a lesser extent, Yu-Gi-Oh! Territory. There was no more room for fighting Foodons or anything. Digimon was even lucky to challenge them. But something as cliche and poorly written and ill-conceived as this could not have risen to the top to contend with those. Or, let alone, even rise to the top to contend with things like Ultraman Tiga or Kirby Right Back at Ya, or, of course, Sonic X, which came out not too long later, after this show kinda started fizzling out. This show just had no chance right from the start. I mean, again, the Foxbox launch was extremely successful, with a lot of people tuning in, but a lot of people left when this show was out, because it just really did not look good. A lot of people agreed. And it was the last show to air in the lineup, so yeah, a good time to kind of drop off, huh? I mean, a few people stayed to answer the trivia questions, but if you look at the week's ratings after that, it just kind of went boo. And yeah, for good reason. And to clarify, I did not grow up with the show. Even though I was there to watch the launch, I just knew this one was bad. I knew it wouldn't interest me. To be fair, I kind of knew that Ultraman wouldn't really interest me, but I watched through that one. But even this one, there's something about it where even I, as a really young kid, knew this was not going to pick me up at all. So yeah, does it get the Scouting Seal of Disapproval? Yeah, of course. I mean, it's not terrible. I mean, you can watch it, and it's fine for kids, but it's just kind of lame. That's it. It's not even really average. It's not even really so bad that it's good. I mean, it's trying hard, but I don't feel that it's trying hard enough to stand out. But in the couple areas that it is trying hard, it's not doing it in the right area. It's trying to use its gimmick above everything else, above actually having an interesting story or characters or anything. It's just a gimmick first. And ultimately, even Foxbox knew that because they always made it the last in their lineup. They started promoting it less and less as the time was going on because, it's failing and nothing is bringing anybody in. And of course, they were making room for more shows coming out. But you know what? In my research, I found that some people actually like it. Some for guilty pleasure, some for nostalgia, or some just genuinely like it. And good for you guys. I mean, like I said, it's inoffensive and harmless, albeit still pretty stupid. But yeah, you guys can enjoy it. I mean, there's nothing wrong with that, but I guess there is a little bit of a division in what people think of this show. I guess next time I should tackle something that's a bit more one and at inner peace with what they feel about the show. Yeah, we're going there. Just piece those words I emphasized together, and then maybe you'll be at one with your inner peace, and then you'll be able to find out what it is. And in case you didn't guess what it is, the show I'm covering next is obviously